before we went to break, I wanted to know, what do you think makes Trey Lance so polarizing? Like, I know this is a really unique situation to the 49ers, but it feels like people are going out of their way to create this level of controversy around someone who's done almost nothing to invite any levels of controversy around him. I mean, the only thing Trey Lance did was get drafted by the 49ers. Had he not done that, what has he done? What has he done? What has Trey Lance ever done that has fired someone up to make such a definitive statement about him one way or the other? To me, one of the reasons why he's so polarizing is because people need to create content. I mean, more than anything else.
The belly of the beast must be fed.
Yeah, and I just think that he's so unpolarizing that they've had to gin up a situation, as unique as it is, and just focus on how odd it is, and the odd thing feels like it could be polarizing. But is it the fact that he is the 49ers starting quarterback? Which so if I were doing the show with Ray today, that's what he'd say. Say, no matter who the starting quarterback of the 49ers is, the guy behind him is the people's choice. It's always been that way.
The backup quarterback's the most popular guy in town.
Exactly. So that's just, Niner fans are maniacal about their obsession with their backup quarterbacks, and that's just the town that you live in. So that's how Ray would frame it. Is it because it's Jimmy Garoppolo? Is it because we still have no clue whether or not he can do this, which I think is a huge part of it, and he's been entrusted to such what people say is a precious playoff situation? Is it because of the loss? Let's say he had thrown 3 interceptions in Chicago, but the Niners win the game. He has a much better week this week on the radio than he just did, right? He could have played demonstrably poorer in Chicago than he played. And had the 49ers won the game, people, I think, would have backed off him. But just, I hear he didn't play well. I hear people don't like him. I hear Kyle's running out of patience because of this Matt or Jason Lock and Forrest story. And so, because, what was it? Comedian Norm Macdonald, he had this thing where he said, when I was growing up, people had like 7 opinions. That was it. Right. You had about 7 opinions, and you didn't have any opinions on everything. Nobody ever asked you about anything other than your 7 opinions. That's all you had. Maybe it's because people have to have an opinion, and it's got to sound definitive, and everyone thinks that in every moment that they need to be the next Skip Bayless and just as interesting, and there's a camera on them, and they need a definitive opinion, even though they really don't have one yet.
Right. I have the answer to this one for you. I really do. I don't have a lot of answers, Damon, but I have this one. I've been doing this YouTube show since March. So when you do your own YouTube show, you can see on the back end what gets traction and what doesn't. And I could literally sit down with John Lynch, who's a Hall of Fame safety. Jimmy Ward could be sitting right there, arguably one of the 5 or 6 best 49ers. We could be talking about the most scintillating conversation about NFL safety play till the cows come home, with all kinds of information, graphics, you name it, third-party quotes, and it would get a smaller amount of traction than if I just held up a phone outside my garage and just started talking about Trey Lance. It is the intersection of quarterback and quarterback, Trey Lance and Trey Lance. Now, I know I've heard other people say it's bigger than that. It's race related and this and that. To me, it transcends race. It's about clicks. You guys had Mike Martz on your show in August, and he wasn't very polarizing then about Trey Lance.
Right.
But guess what?
No one talked about that interview.
Yeah, but guess what? Now he's got a podcast. Now he's got a whatever cast, and so he just comes out super hard takes, burying Justin Fields, burying Trey Lance. Why? Because he's looking for clicks, baby. He's looking for clicks. He's looking for clicks. Everybody on YouTube's looking for followers and subscribers and likes, and it's all equates back to the greenbacks. It's all about money. So, I mean, I talked to a guy from who covers the Niners for ESPN this week. Said, how's ESPN?
Wagner?
Not Wagner. Another guy who covers it for ESPN. Good guy. And he said, you know what? They're very quarterback-centric. You know, and it's like not shocking because we see images of the head coach and the quarterback. So football to the fans is all about the head coach or the quarterback because we never see images of anybody else.
Right.
So nobody else even matters. But it's really more about money. There's a ton of people that are bloggers, that are videographers, that are YouTubers, that are columnists, and it doesn't matter if you got a website, if you're writing for a newspaper, if you're on the radio, television, YouTube. Trey Lance gets clicks. Clicks equal revenue. That's why people are parking their car. I'll say this. I would wish every single person who got in front of a microphone this week and ripped Trey Lance to acknowledge before they said syllable number one, how many plays did you watch? That should be the first question. Joe Theismann, hey, welcome. You're on 95.7 The Game. Hey, before I ask you about Trey, I know you're going to give me your thoughts. How many plays did you watch?
Right.
Oh, well, actually, I saw highlight. How many plays did you watch? Not highlights. How many plays of the game did you watch? Right. Don't you think we should that almost is like a prerequisite. We almost should have to divulge how much, you're giving me your opinion and you're freely do it, but what's your opinion based on?
Right. It's like a menu has to let you know what their calorie count is. Like, what is the nutritional value of what I'm about to ingest
right.
here?
I mean, give me your perspective. I know you played in the NFL. I know who you are. I know your name. How much of this quarterback have you watched? And do you have a podcast? Do you have a media project that you're looking to promote? Because if more times than not, if they're coming on and they got really strong, fired up opinions, they got some project, they're looking for clicks, they're looking for attention, they're looking for viral traction, and it all equals greenbacks.
See, this is
that's why people are parking at the intersection of Garoppolo and Lance.
And this is why I make a great guest. I got nothing going on.
Yeah,
I got no ambition.
You don't have an agenda.
No,
you don't have an agenda.
I don't have an agenda.
You're not even a Niner fan. You're an observer of Niner football, but you're not. It's not like you're sitting there going, God, I'm losing it. Like me.
Correct.
I'm a little bit more of like,
Yeah. Well, look, I got to tell you, there's only the one team around here that I have absolutely taken. Like, that's it. Like, I'm a fan. It's the Warriors. Because I'm just a basketball junkie.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sitting here in my Indiana shirt once again. You know, I mean, basketball to me is sports heroin.
Were you ever really Bulls-centric? No.
Yes. No, I was.
Oh, you were?
I was. Absolutely, I was.
And you swore off Cubbies, right? Or
I have a very complicated relationship with the city of Chicago on many fronts right now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But that's it right there. It's about money. It's about money. Some people would say it's about race, and maybe some people would say, oh, you know, there's that element.
Well,
God, I really hope to think that these football analysts have enough credibility that their opinions would supersede any racial component of the competitors. I think it's really just about money. It's about money and clicks.
Right.
And
well, I mean,
revenue.
like when they criticize Jared
Traction.
Goff, it's not about race, right? You know, and like when we were criticizing Alex Smith, race had nothing to do with it, and I thought we were very critical of him as well. I thought that there was no amount of whiteness or handsomeness that ever came to save Jimmy, you know? And now I'm not saying that there is no element to any racial component. That's nonsense. There's always something to it, but I know it's not emanating from this studio. I know that any criticisms aren't based in anyone's race coming from you or I or really any show on this station. I don't know where that is, you know, the number one factor. Or had Trey Lance been white, no one's criticizing him at all. Like, I just don't think that world exists either. So
Trevor Lawrence has struggled mightily for a year and a half and has a lot more starts than Trey Lance. I don't hear anybody.
Well, it's Jacksonville. No one cares.
Yeah, I guess, is that it?
I think it's part of it. Why is Trey Lance so polarizing? That was the question we put out to the audience. 888-957-9570. I want to start by welcoming everyone to their 4 o'clock hour. Here's Ray.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco. Always live on Twitch, YouTube, and the free Odyssey app. Damn well better be free.
And that's our songbird right there. What makes Lance so polarizing? This is Jay in San Jose. Jay, what do you got?
What's up, fellas? How you doing?
What's
Doing
up,
well.
Jay?
Trey sailed into, like, the perfect storm. I think we've talked ad nauseum about Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. They were at the big schools. We went to all the championships. No one knows anything about Trey other than his team played a game simply to up his draft position for one game, which has never been done, never been heard of. We don't know anything about this kid. And the fact that the Niners risked it all, we're not the Lions who will just kind of draft anybody. We risked everything for this one kid who no one knows anything about, and we are the premier quarterback team of the NFL. When the Niners have a quarterback, the NFL is better. Think about when Colin was at his peak. There was people that were saying Colin is going to be the greatest quarterback of all time at some point when he was running the ball against Green Bay. The NFL is at its peak when we have a quarterback. So all those things added up to the fact that it's his time to get talked about. We don't know who this kid is. Until he gives us something, this is what it's going to be. And unfortunately for Trey, he just walked or sailed right into the middle of it.
Thank you, Jay. There's a lot there to what you just said, and the unknown that he represents, I do think, drives people nuts. Because, I mean, we just went through we just went through a whole pandemic where every single person went from pivoting from what they absolutely know about border protection to what they absolutely know about viruses and epidemiology.
Right.
Like the amount of, I'm going to act like an expert in an area in which I have very little working knowledge of said area. It's an epidemic right now on social media.
Social media is a huge part of the whole thing. I mean, there's no question. No, absolutely no question. The social media part of it, Damon, I mean, is everybody's got to have a strong, definitive take. You know what I mean?
Right.
And patience be gone, right? I mean, the concept of patience is like...
No,
I mean, Bucky Brooks, to me, said the most intelligent thing. He said, we saw some good things. We saw some bad things. Guess what? I think we need to check back in like 4 to 8 weeks. That's so grounded and so reasonable that we were like, want to sprint away from that. Don't book Bucky Brooks. You know?
Right.
We don't want him.
Yeah.
It's too reasonable. It's too normal. It's like, but that in reality, that's Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks in their little sit down, I thought had the best breakdown. Daniel's like, hey, I thought Trey was inaccurate at times, but he hit some good deep over routes, and he actually thinks they ought to run him more. Both those guys think they ought to run him more. I totally disagree with that. But they both said, hey, we saw some good things, and we saw some bad things, and check back in a month, check back in 2 months, and we're going to have a much better idea of what's real and what's just make believe.
Ray and I have been coming back to this point. It's about data points. Every single NFL season, every single sports season, it's just every game that you watch, no matter what the game is, it's a collection of data points. And when you start collecting all these data points, you gain knowledge and you gain understanding. We have so few data points on this guy, what the team looks like with this guy at its helm, how the right way to groom this guy is, because there's no only one way to do it. So it's driving people nuts. And look at this. We have 5 lit lines. People want to talk about Trey. Why has he been so polarizing? This is Lucky in San Francisco. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, Damon and Larry? How you guys doing today?
Very well.
Doing great.
All right. Well, my take on Trey is that it's an expectation of the unknown compared to the expectation of the known. Like, we know what Jimmy can do, but we don't know what Trey can do. So you have to give him time and give him an opportunity to showcase his skills. It's only been one game, and I'm not saying that if something happens, like if he gets injured, put Jimmy in. But until that happens, leave Trey in, let him get his hands dirty. It's like when you're in the woodshop class. You make that first little square, right? Then, after time goes on, you can make that fine English leg, wood table leg, right? So
I tapped out at Birdhouse. I tapped out at Birdhouse. I got to be honest, Lucky.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, man, I love the fact of them picking him up because he reminds me of Randall Cunningham. You know, nobody knew what Randall Cunningham was. They said, "Oh, he's a running guy. He doesn't have good accuracy." But once he had time to play in that system, look where he took the Eagles. So we have to give Trey some time.
Well, that's it. There's nothing left to do. Thank you very much, Lucky, for the call. Good call. There's nothing left to do but play him. I mean, all the preparation, all of the playbook study, all of the off-season workout, all of the year of the apprenticeship holding the clipboard. There is nothing left to do with him but play him. So when Jason Lockenfora says, little birdies are tweeting at me that if they're 0-2, they might go back to Jimmy, no. There is no, let's pretend Jimmy doesn't exist until we have to acknowledge that he does because there's an injury that makes QB1 not exist. You need to. I tell this to kids. Sometimes I go back to schools or I talk to high schools or kids, and I went back to Indiana to talk to broadcasting students. And this is, I think, good advice for anyone who is starting out in anything in life.
Pick a different field.
Do not go into radio. Thank you for listening. Yeah.
All you people, I know you want to be me. Don't. Thank you.
I always say that it is, while you are in school, it is just as important to learn what you don't like doing as it is to what you might like doing. Like, have a list that you're eliminating. Not that anymore. Don't want to do that.
Right.
Just don't like, that's not my cup of tea. Like, knowing that is good. This is a collection of data points. It all comes back to the collection of data points. Knowing what we know about Jimmy Garoppolo, we know all we can really know. We know all we can really know. When it comes to Trey Lance, we haven't even scratched the surface of what we might know. But if he stinks, if he isn't the one, if it doesn't work out, if he is inaccurate, you need to know that too. And you need to know that with a season of him struggling. And might it undo the plans of grand Super Bowl expectations? Yes, it would. But that's the price you pay to enter a conversation like this. The 49ers tinkered with something that was very, very fragile to begin with. All football teams are fragile. I mean, they sound like these big iron sharpens iron, big, nasty, tough things. But the truth is, football teams are very, very fragile. I mean, look at how built to succeed it looked like the 49ers backfield was. And in two moves, cut Trey Sermon, Eli Mitchell gets hurt, you're at 3, 4, 5 in your depth chart, just like that.
They're calling Marlon Mack.
Exactly. So it's all very, very fragile. But you got to know whether or not Trey Lance has it. And there will be games where he wins, and you might doubt whether or not he has it. It's easy to doubt whether or not he has it in the losses. They need to know what he's like in their wins, too. They need to know how and in what direction he's... Do you realize that there's a better chance? The odds are overwhelming that Trey Lance never wins a Super Bowl with the 49ers.
Sure.
Those are overwhelming, just real-world football odds that they will never win with him. So if they do with him, you can't say, oh, I knew it all along. It was meant to be. There is nothing about an unproven quarterback from North Dakota State that has ever been meant to be in this league, as raw as this man has stepped into this league. It's so unique that the only thing left to do is have the year sink or swim with him. That's it. You've got to find out now. Because the whole point of having a young quarterback is to have that young quarterback pay scale, which allows you to spend money on your team, that makes you say things like, we have a Super Bowl team, we just need some good quarterback play, and we're going to be good. They sort of did it in reverse. They built this team, then they got the quarterback on the rookie scale. Then they didn't play that quarterback on the rookie scale last year. And hindsight says, well, they went to the NFC title game, so I guess it was worth it. Was it?
They drafted an incredibly raw player, and then people are acting shocked that this incredibly raw player is incredibly raw. I mean, Golden State, I think, is interesting in comparison because they just did the exact same thing.
James Wiseman. Look how that's worked.
They drafted James Wiseman. Is James Wiseman a legit NBA starting center? Is he a future star potentially at center? Maybe. Maybe not. We don't know. We don't know exactly what he is, but they got their ring, right? They wanted to do two things at once. They wanted to develop James Wiseman and win the NBA title. Well, they kind of failed on developing James Wiseman because they couldn't actually get him out there, at least for the moment. But they succeeded on winning the NBA title, so nobody cares. There's no hemming and hawing. Lines aren't lit with people going, yeah, they won the title, but James Wiseman, we still don't know. But we still don't know.
Right.
And, it's in the same, in a very similar fashion, the 49ers are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to, develop Trey Lance and compete for a Super Bowl. Unlike, the Warriors who were able to do it without James Wiseman, I don't know that the 49ers can do it without Trey Lance. I don't know that they can do it with Trey Lance. But I think overall, people need to be a little bit more patient. And then overall, I think you gotta ask yourself, what's reasonable? What's a reasonable amount of time? And I would say, you got to give it at least half the year before and evaluate every game and evaluate every aspect of the game. But what I'm looking for is, does he repeat mistakes or does he make them once and correct them and move on? And I think Trey Lance is going to be in that latter group. I think he's going to be the kind of guy that makes mistakes. Right now, I think Kyle and the offensive coaching staff, they're experimenting a little bit with what he is as a player.